This is Donna with More Than a Review, and I'm so excited to be here with Nancy today. So this is the first time I've got to meet her, and we are going to talk about her books, River City Dead, and you have the great titles. We'll have to ask you, like, if you get to come up with them or if they come up with them. And then she's got a brand new series coming out, The Plunge, so we'll talk about both of those. But Nancy, I'd love to start out, like, what led you to write? Like, what made you, like, get into that?
When I was about 7, my mother would write poems to me on special occasions. We'd write back and forth, and the poems were awful. But it showed me that people would stop to read something, rather than if you just said it. If you wrote it, they would stop to read it. And I think she's the one that made me realize that, hey, I need to learn how to do this, you know.
And
I just loved it. I've always loved it.
Wow. So how did River City Dead come about, like that series?
Well, the series features Aggie Mundeen, who is a transplant from Chicago. And she's past 30, and she's worried about getting older. And she's single, so she decides she's going to Texas to start over. So we have this, Aggie is looking at sizing up all these Texans, and she has wisecracks about them and thoughts about them, and of course she keeps stumbling into murders while this happens. And I wanted to put her in different situations where she would see different groups of Texans and have to react to them. So first she has to shape up because she writes a column called Stay Young with Aggie. So when she gets to Texas, she's got to shape up, so when they find out she writes this column, they won't go, really. So she goes to the health club first, and that's Fit to be Dead. And then I take her to a dude ranch, because I wanted her to see those characters for sure. And then I take her to a university, because she's heard that one of the professors has he's discovered a genetic clue for aging, and she thinks, by golly. And in the meantime, she has met this detective, and she really likes him a lot, but he's rather averse to getting married because he lost his first family, and he's just scared. So she decides, all right, I'm going to need a little longer, so I need to take this class. So she goes to a San Antonio University, and by this time they have solved crimes together, not always to his he's not always thrilled about it, but they do. And so they go to the river walk, the San Antonio River walk, for a rendezvous. And she's kind of nervous, because she hasn't dated anybody in 20 years, but she's excited. And they go to the room, to the suite, and there's a dead body in their suite. So that sort of changes everything. And she gets into a lot of antics on the river with the different things that go on during fiesta. And she finds out that the fabulous femmes who stay at the hotel and are having their convention are having a dance performance at Arneson River Theater. So she manages to get herself in the dance performance. And so the scenes on the river, we get a lot of scenes on the river and what happens there during fiesta.
So now, are you continuing her character in the new book, or will it be?
Yes, I couldn't give up Aggie and Sam. And there was a flood in Texas, from central Texas all the way to the Gulf Coast, and they called it a 500-year flood because it was an epic flood. And I was there when it happened, as were some of my family. So I wanted to write about it on the anniversary of that flood, which was 20 years ago. So I wanted to get this book out, and that's what The Plunge is. That's when Aggie and Sam are caught in this flood. And so it changes them, as disaster often does. So she decides she's going to stay in the area and work there. And so this sort of changes her viewpoint, and he goes back to San Antonio. He's still a detective. It's only 35 miles, but it changes the dynamic a little bit. So
that is great.
It'll be fun.
Yes. So does writing, like, is it what you thought it would be? Like, because sometimes we have these high expectations that it's going to be glamorous, maybe. So have you seen any surprises as you started writing?
Lots. Well, it's hard work, and the thing that's hardest about it is the deadlines. Because the first book you write before you're published, you can take 10 years, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, and you can keep going back to polish it. And that was a suspense novel I wrote before this series. It was called 9 Days to Evil. And I loved the writing, but I had so much time to go back and fix everything, but once a publisher has you on a schedule, you don't have that luxury. And so I'm always kind of scared the first time I go back after they've been published for 6 months and I read them to see what I should have done that I didn't have time to do, Yeah. So I guess that was the biggest surprise. I knew it existed, but I just didn't internalize it, and realize that you're not going to have all the time in the world to write this book. So that's the way it goes.
Wow. So what would you tell your younger writing self?
Well, I would tell them to get every craft book they can find on fiction and read it. Because then when they start writing, they have an idea, at least, of what they're trying to do. And then when they write a draft, they can go read another book and think, oh, yeah, I should have done so-and-so in that book. And so you learn something, just like you learn from these conferences, you learn something from every one of those books. And you can go back then and add that to your knowledge of either dialogue or pacing or suspense or how to write a scene or whatever, or all of that. And people say it in their books in different ways. And so you'll respond to one of the books more perhaps than others. And I always reread one of those books before I start a new one.
Oh.
Because I think that I just need the little shot in the arm.
Oh. So I was going to ask how this series came about, because you talk about Meredith's mature graduate school friend.
Right.
So how did that come about?
Well, Meredith was the protagonist in 9 Days to Evil, which preceded these books.
Okay.
And in her class was Aggie, who had on a warm-up suit of one color and lipstick of another color and an attitude of the professor that, okay, show me something. Because she's older than the students. And she's not cowed by being, in a class, in a graduate class, because she's been in a lot of classes, and so she wants him to show her something. Mm-hmm. And so they have a little friction there, she and the professor. And of course, unfortunately, now let's see, he's still around for that whole book. Because it's Meredith's problem. Meredith gets in a terrible dilemma. And Aggie is there to help her out of it. So
did you, at the time, ever think that Aggie would become a series?
Aggie told me. She said, and when I would write the small parts of Aggie in those books, I was just taken with her. And she told me, she said, all right, I want you need to write about me. And maybe a series.
So she has a good personality.
Well, yeah, she's humorous. She has more experience because she's older. Meredith was 22. Mm-hmm. And so Aggie, she has a little more depth to her, and I thought she could carry a series. Mm-hmm. Turns out I may never get rid of her. But anyway, that's the way it went.
That's awesome. So do you have anything else in the works?
I do. I'm writing a suspense novel, a domestic suspense, and it's about an 18-year-old baseball player. Oh. I know, really different. And his parents are getting a divorce, and he's terribly depressed and sad, and he feels guilty, like all children do, like it's not their fault, but they think it is. And so he's sitting in a dark diner and moping. And he sees at the other end of the diner the back of a man that looks, I don't know, he described him as his head being coiled down and his jacket like a snake that's ready to pounce. And there's something creepy about this man, and he's just watching him. And his mother comes in the diner and sits across from this man. And of course then he doesn't know, is that man the reason for their breakup, or who is this man? And they talk quite a bit, and the boy slinks down because he doesn't want his mother to see him. He's supposed to be either practicing baseball or at home studying, and so he doesn't want them to see him. And then the man suddenly gets up and leaves the diner. And of course, Decker has to follow this man. And when he does, he gets in all kinds of trouble that he never imagined.
Wow.
And
So when will that be coming out?
Well, I don't know. I haven't finished it yet.
Oh.
But we'll see.
Wow. So do you know how they end, or sometimes do the characters take over?
I have a plan, and I think I know how they're going to end. And then sometimes it's not a strong enough ending to support the suspense that's come before, or the characters just do something that I think they should do. I'm sure it's a subconscious thing, and they come out and do something, and you think, okay, that's the way you feel about it. Well, we'll just change the ending.
Wow.
So that happens a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's weird. I know, it's weird.
I think all the writers would understand it.
Probably.
Oh, so Nancy, I always love to end it with, tell us something that you think your readers and listeners would be surprised to know about you.
Well, I tile tabletops for,
wow.
because I like tile because it's permanent. And I think all writers have other things, other creative things they do while their brains are resting, but they have to do something creative, and I guess that's mine. I love music, I love people, and I'm learning to play the guitar. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So, I don't know.
I love
Learning.
Yes, you love learning. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well,
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So
it's
again,
a pleasure.
River City Dead is already out, and The Plunge will be out soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thank you.